She catches feelings after one night with mysterious stranger, gets pregnant with quadruplets. He's a millionaire CEO. Love and Twilight's family. Welcome back to our sacred space of love. Each time we gather here, I feel the invisible threads of our connection growing stronger, weaving a beautiful tapestry of hearts from every corner of the world. Tonight, as we step into another unforgettable tale, take a deep breath and let the world fade away. This moment is ours. A moment to feel, to reflect, to journey through emotions that bind us as one. Before we begin, I want to hear from you. Where in this magnificent world are you watching from? Are you in the heart of America, where dreams chase the horizon? Or perhaps in the timeless beauty of Europe, where history whispers through cobblestone streets? Maybe you're in the golden embrace of Africa, where the sun kisses the earth with warmth, or amidst the serenity of the Caribbean, where the waves hum lullabies of love. Wherever you are, your presence matters. Drop a present in the comments and let your light shine in our growing constellation. Our last story, did it stir something deep within you? Did you feel the sting of heartbreak, the fire of hope, the echo of your own untold story? Here, in Love and Twilights, we don't just tell stories. We live them. We feel them. We heal through them. So, settle in. Let your heart open. And if my words move you, if they stir something unspoken inside, don't hold back. Let me know in the comments below. Because here, your voice is never just an echo in the wind. It is a heartbeat in our shared journey. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this story with your beautiful families. Now, let's begin.
The autumn chill penetrated through Lila's thin shawl as she stood outside the Sterling Hotel, questioning her decision to attend tonight's charity gala. At 32, she had grown accustomed to the rhythm of disappointment, art exhibitions that fell short of expectations, relationships that dissolved like watercolors in rain, and a bank account that never quite supported her dreams. Yet here she was, about to enter a realm of wealth and privilege that felt entirely foreign. Just 1 hour, she promised herself, adjusting the vintage burgundy dress she'd carefully restored for the occasion. Her closest friend Zoe had insisted she come, sliding the invitation across the table at their weekly coffee meetup. You need to get out of that studio. Meet people. Remember there's a world beyond your canvases. The grand ballroom glistened with crystal chandeliers and polished marble. Lila accepted a flute of champagne from a passing server, using it more as a prop than a beverage. She observed the crowd, executives in tailored suits, socialites draped in designer gowns, all engaged in the carefully choreographed dance of high society networking. First time? The deep voice came from behind her, startling her enough that champagne nearly sloshed over the rim of her glass. Lila turned to find herself facing a man who seemed somehow separate from the glittering chaos around them. He stood slightly apart from the crowded center of the room, his posture suggesting both confidence and reserve. His dark suit was impeccably tailored, but unlike others in the room, he wore his wealth with understated elegance. That obvious? Lila replied, attempting humor to mask her discomfort. You're actually looking at the art, he said, nodding toward the Renaissance-inspired painting she'd been admiring. Everyone else is too busy looking at each other. His observation disarmed her. Adrian Blackwood. He introduced himself, extending his hand. Lila Chin. His hand was warm, his grip firm but not imposing. The artist. His question caught her completely off guard. You know my work? Adrian's mouth curved into a slight smile. Your exhibition at the Moore Gallery last spring. Your use of light in urban landscapes was memorable. The conversation shifted from polite exchange to genuine dialogue as Adrian guided her toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. He asked thoughtful questions about her techniques and inspirations, revealing a depth of understanding that belied his corporate appearance. "And what brings a CEO to an art charity gala?" Lila finally asked, having pieced together from their conversation that he headed a major technology investment firm. "I fund the foundation," he replied simply. "Though most nights I send a representative. Tonight—" He paused, his expression momentarily unguarded. "I needed a break from boardrooms and balance sheets." As the evening progressed, they found themselves gravitating away from the crowd. Adrian suggested the hotel's rooftop garden, a space usually reserved for private events but accessible to him through his connections. Under the open sky, with the city lights creating a luminous backdrop, their conversation deepened. Lila shared stories of her childhood in a small apartment above her parents' grocery store, sketching customers while perched on a stool behind the counter. She described the scholarship that had allowed her to study fine arts, and the constant struggle to remain true to her artistic vision while paying rent. Adrian's revelations came more slowly, measured and deliberate. Born into wealth, he had nonetheless experienced profound isolation. His parents, absorbed in their own ventures and social obligations, had essentially outsourced his childhood to a rotation of nannies and boarding schools. Success was the only acceptable outcome, he said, running a finger along the edge of his now empty glass. Emotion was a liability, vulnerability a weakness. "And now?" Lila asked. "After achieving all that success?" Adrian looked at her directly, his guard lowering for the first time. "Now I have everything that should matter and a persistent feeling that something essential is missing." The hours dissolved as they spoke about art and ambition, privilege and purpose. When a cool breeze swept across the rooftop, Adrian removed his jacket and placed it around Lila's shoulders without interrupting his story about a disastrous early investment. "The gala's probably wrapping up," Lila noted, glancing at her watch. Somehow, 3 hours had passed. "Would you like to go somewhere else?" Adrian asked. "I know a small cafe not far from here. They serve excellent coffee and stay open late." The cafe was exactly as Adrian had described, intimate, with worn leather chairs and bookshelves lining the walls. They were its only customers at that late hour, the barista greeting Adrian by name. "You come here often?" Lila asked after they'd settled at a corner table. "When I need to remember that the world exists beyond corporate headquarters." His smile held a hint of self-deprecation. "The owner refuses to sell despite numerous offers for this location. I respect his dedication to creating something authentic." Their conversation continued to flow, traveling down unexpected paths. Lila revealed her dream of creating a community arts program for children in underserved neighborhoods. Adrian described his private passion for architectural photography, a hobby he pursued on rare free weekends. As closing time approached, they reluctantly stepped back into the night. The earlier rain had left the sidewalks glistening under streetlights. "May I walk you home?" Adrian asked. "It's the opposite direction from your place," Lila pointed out, remembering he'd mentioned his penthouse across town. "I'd like to," he insisted gently. They strolled through the quieting streets, their pace unhurried. When they reached an intersection illuminated by a vintage street lamp, Lila stopped suddenly. "The light on your face right now." She began, then hesitated. "What about it?" Adrian asked. "I wish I could capture it," she admitted. "Half in shadow, half illuminated. It's exactly how you've been all night, revealing and concealing in equal measure." Adrian's expression softened. "No one has ever seen me quite the way you do." Without overthinking, Lila reached into her small purse and pulled out the sketch pad she always carried. Standing under the street lamp, she quickly captured his likeness on paper, confident strokes defining the strong jawline, the thoughtful eyes, the carefully maintained distance he kept from the world. When she handed him the sketch, their fingers brushed. The simple contact sent an unexpected current between them. "This is how you see me?" he asked quietly, studying the drawing. "Yes," she answered honestly. "Someone complex. Worth knowing." The moment stretched between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. Then Adrian carefully folded the sketch and placed it in his inner pocket, close to his heart. "Would you have dinner with me tomorrow?" he asked, his usual certainty giving way to genuine question. Instead of answering immediately, Lila rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips gently to his. The kiss was brief but electric, holding both question and answer. "Yes," she whispered as she drew back. The remaining walk to her apartment building passed in a charged silence, their shoulders occasionally brushing. At her door, their goodnight kiss deepened, hands tentatively exploring, breaths mingling. "Come up," Lila asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Adrian's eyes searched hers. "Are you certain?" Her answer was to take his hand and lead him through the door. What followed was unlike anything Lila had experienced, a night of passion intertwined with unexpected tenderness. Adrian's controlled exterior gave way to genuine intimacy, each touch and whispered word creating a connection that transcended physical attraction. As dawn approached, they lay tangled in Lila's sheets, the city slowly awakening beyond her windows. Neither spoke of what would come next, both sensing that something extraordinary had transpired between them, something that defied the casual encounter it might have been. When Adrian finally left with promises to call later, Lila stood at her window watching his retreating figure. She felt irrevocably changed, though she couldn't have explained exactly how or why. Something had awakened within her, not just desire, but possibility. She couldn't have known then how profoundly that single night would alter the course of her life, or that the man who had seen her so clearly would soon become inextricably bound to her future in ways neither could have imagined. 6 weeks after that fateful night with Adrian, Lila stood frozen in her bathroom, staring at the plastic test strip in her trembling hand. The second pink line had appeared, clear and unmistakable. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. This wasn't supposed to happen. They had been careful, or so she thought. In the days following their encounter, Adrian had called as promised. They'd met for dinner at an intimate restaurant where he'd spoken of his upcoming business trip to Tokyo. Their connection remained electric, but there was an unspoken understanding that their worlds operated on different orbits. When he left for his 3-week international circuit, they exchanged occasional texts that gradually tapered off. No promises had been made, no future had been planned. Now, everything had changed. Lila scheduled an appointment with her doctor the following day. Dr. Martinez confirmed what the home test had already told her. "Congratulations," she said warmly. "Based on your hormone levels, I'd estimate you're about 6 weeks along." The timeline matched perfectly with that night. There could be no doubt about paternity. "I'd like to do an ultrasound," Dr. Martinez continued. "Just routine for initial confirmation." Lila nodded numbly, still processing the reality of her situation. As a single artist with inconsistent income, motherhood had always seemed like a distant possibility, something to consider after achieving stability in her career. Now, that carefully imagined timeline had collapsed. The cool gel on her abdomen brought her back to the present moment. Dr. Martinez moved the wand methodically, studying the screen with practiced concentration. Her expression shifted subtly from professional calm to surprise. "Ms. Chen," she said carefully, "I'm seeing something unusual here." Lila's heart clenched. "Is something wrong?" "Not wrong exactly." The doctor adjusted the wand. "I'm detecting multiple embryonic sacs." "Multiple? Like twins?" Dr. Martinez turned the screen so Lila could see. Actually, I'm counting 4 distinct embryos. The room seemed to tilt sideways. 4. Lila whispered. That's not possible. Quadruplets are rare, especially naturally conceived ones, the doctor acknowledged, but not impossible. I'll refer you to a specialist in multiple pregnancies immediately. This will be classified as high risk from the outset. Lila barely heard the remaining explanation about increased prenatal care and potential complications. For babies, she was carrying 4 lives inside her. The statistical improbability of it felt like some cosmic joke, or perhaps a message. The following days passed in a fog. Lila moved through her routines mechanically, teaching art classes, working on commissioned pieces, meeting with gallery owners. But her mind continuously circled back to the 4 tiny heartbeats confirmed by the specialist's more comprehensive ultrasound. Dr. Patel, the maternal-fetal medicine specialist, had been direct about the challenges ahead. Multiple pregnancies carry increased risks of premature delivery, low birth weight, gestational diabetes, and complications during labor. You'll need frequent monitoring, possible bed rest in later stages, and significant lifestyle adjustments. Every night, Lila sat at her kitchen table with notebooks and calculators, trying to make the impossible math work. Her small apartment could never accommodate 4 infants. Her health insurance would cover basic prenatal care but not the specialized attention a quadruplet pregnancy required. The modest savings she'd accumulated for an eventual gallery showing would barely cover the essentials for 1 baby, let alone 4. 3 weeks after the initial discovery, Lila stood before a new canvas in her studio, brush poised but motionless. She hadn't painted anything personal in days, too consumed by practical worries. The morning sickness that arrived like clockwork at 9 a.m. had begun to disrupt her teaching schedule. Soon questions would follow. With a sudden surge of determination, she applied broad strokes of color to the canvas, deep blues and purples giving way to lighter hues. She painted for hours, channeling her anxiety and hope into the emerging image. A woman standing at the edge of a vast ocean, facing the horizon with both apprehension and resolve. When she finally stepped back, sweat beading on her forehead, she knew what she had to do. Continuing this journey alone wasn't an option, not with 4 lives depending on her decisions. Finding Adrian's contact information again wasn't difficult. Despite their casual parting, she'd saved his number, though pride had kept her from reaching out when his messages slowed. Now, personal pride seemed trivial compared to the responsibility she carried. She composed and deleted a dozen messages before settling on directness. Adrian, I need to speak with you about something important. Could we meet? His response came surprisingly quickly. I'm in Chicago until Thursday. Everything okay? Lila stared at her phone. This wasn't news to deliver via text. Nothing urgent, but I'd prefer to talk in person when you're back. They arranged to meet at the same cafe where they'd spent hours talking that night. As the day approached, Lila rehearsed different ways to deliver the news, each scenario ending with a different imagined reaction from Adrian. Would he assume she was seeking financial support? Would he question the truth of her claim? Would he disappear entirely? The morning of their meeting, Lila dressed carefully in a loose-fitting blouse that concealed her still flat stomach. Though only 10 weeks along, she felt fundamentally changed, not just physically, but in her entire approach to life. Decisions that once seemed important now felt trivial. Worries that had consumed her had recalibrated against the magnitude of creating new life. When she entered the cafe, Adrian was already waiting. He rose as she approached, his expression warming. He looked exactly as she remembered, composed, elegant, his presence commanding even in this casual setting. For a fleeting moment, the memory of their night together flashed vividly in her mind. Lila, he said, pulling out her chair. It's good to see you. Thank you for meeting me, she replied, her practiced opening lines suddenly evaporating. They exchanged brief pleasantries about his business trip and her recent commission for a corporate headquarters. Adrian ordered coffee while Lila requested herbal tea, a change he noticed with raised eyebrows but didn't comment on. When the server departed, Adrian leaned forward slightly. "You mentioned something important." Lila took a steadying breath. No gentle lead-in would soften this revelation. "I'm pregnant," she said, meeting his eyes directly. "With quadruplets." Adrian's expression froze, his coffee cup suspended halfway to his lips. For several seconds, he remained perfectly still, as though her words had temporarily stopped time. "That's..." He finally began, then stopped, clearly recalibrating. "You're certain?" "2 specialists have confirmed it. I'm 10 weeks along." He carefully set down his cup. "And you're certain they're..." "Yours." Lila finished quietly. "There's been no one else." The weight of realization settled visibly on his shoulders. Adrian ran a hand through his precisely styled hair, disrupting its perfect arrangement. A small but telling break in his composed exterior. "For babies," he said almost to himself, "the statistical probability. 1 in 700,000 approximately," Lila supplied. "I've been doing my research." Their eyes met across the table, both recognizing the extraordinary crossroads where they suddenly found themselves. One chance encounter had multiplied into 4 new lives, connecting them irrevocably regardless of what came next. "I'm not here to demand anything," Lila continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I just believed you had the right to know." Adrian nodded slowly, his analytical mind visibly processing implications and possibilities. When he finally spoke again, his voice had softened. "What do you need, Lila?" It was this simple question, not what she expected, but what she needed, that unexpectedly brought tears to her eyes. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "I'm still figuring that out myself." Adrian Blackwood's penthouse office occupied the entire top floor of the Blackwood Investments building. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city skyline, a constant reminder of his position at the apex of the business world. For 10 years, he had built his company with methodical precision, earning a reputation for brilliant strategy and emotional detachment, qualities that had served him well in boardrooms and negotiations. Now, alone in this carefully designed sanctuary of power, those same qualities failed him completely. "Quadruplets," he whispered to the empty room, testing how the word felt in his mouth. "For children." His children. With a woman he barely knew yet couldn't forget. The news had shattered the careful compartmentalization that defined his existence. In the 3 days since Lila had told him, Adrian had moved through his professional obligations like an automaton, present in body but absent in mind. Executive meetings, investment reviews, and strategic planning sessions continued around him while internally, his thoughts constantly returned to Lila's calm voice delivering news that rewrote his future. His assistant knocked lightly before entering. "Mr. Blackwood, the Tokyo investors are waiting in the conference room." "Reschedule them," Adrian said, not turning from the window. "Sir?" His assistant's surprise was justified. Adrian Blackwood never rescheduled. It was one of his immutable rules. Commitments were sacred. "Clear my calendar for the remainder of the day." When he was alone again, Adrian pulled out his phone and scrolled to Lila's contact. Their brief text exchanges hadn't progressed to photographs, so there was no image associated with her name. Yet he could perfectly recall her features, the intelligent eyes that observed everything with an artist's attention to detail, the slight asymmetry of her smile, the way her expression changed when she spoke about her work. He dialed her number before he could reconsider. "Adrian?" She answered on the 3rd ring, background noise suggesting she was outdoors. "Can we talk more?" Perhaps dinner tonight. The directness of his request surprised even him. A brief pause. That would be good. They arranged details quickly. Adrian ended the call and immediately contacted his personal attorney, requesting an urgent meeting before his dinner with Lila. Whatever path forward they chose, he intended to be prepared. The attorney's office was deliberately understated, no ostentation that might unsettle nervous clients. Lawrence Kim had handled Adrian's legal affairs for 15 years, since Adrian's first successful venture capital deal. Quadruplets, Lawrence repeated after Adrian explained the situation. Naturally conceived? Apparently so. And you're certain of paternity? Yes. Adrian's tone left no room for further questioning on that point. Lawrence nodded, accepting his client's certainty. What are you looking to establish here, Adrian? Financial arrangements? Custody parameters? Legal distancing? The last option, a clinical separation of responsibility and involvement, would have been Adrian's automatic choice in any previous scenario involving unexpected complications. Make the problem disappear with money and legal barriers. Keep moving forward. Stay focused. I'm not sure yet, Adrian admitted. I need to understand my obligations and options. Lawrence studied him carefully. This isn't just about legal obligation. This is about what kind of man you want to be. The pointed observation cut through Adrian's practiced detachment. What kind of man indeed? His own father had been physically present but emotionally absent, viewing family as an extension of his business empire. Adrian had vowed never to create that same cold dynamic. His solution had been to avoid family entanglements altogether. Now that option was gone. Draw up comprehensive support documentation, Adrian instructed, but leave flexibility for various involvement scenarios. When he met Lila that evening at an upscale restaurant chosen for its private dining rooms, Adrian arrived with a leather portfolio containing the preliminary legal documents. They remained untouched throughout the meal as conversation moved in unexpected directions. The specialist recommended additional nutrition support, Lila explained, detailing her recent medical appointment. Multiple pregnancies deplete maternal resources more quickly. Adrian listened attentively, noting how she spoke of medical facts with calm practicality while her hands betrayed nervous energy, constantly adjusting her silverware. "Have you told your family?" he asked. "Not yet. My parents live overseas. This isn't news I want to deliver by phone." She hesitated. "What about yours?" Adrian's laugh held no humor. "My father would view this as a strategic complication. My mother would be concerned primarily with potential social embarrassment." "That sounds lonely," Lila observed quietly. The simple comment penetrated Adrian's defenses more effectively than any accusation could have. Loneliness had been his constant companion, though he'd dressed it as independence. "What do you want, Lila?" he asked directly. "From me, from this situation?" She considered the question seriously before answering. "I want these children to have the chance to know their father. Not just through child support checks or holiday visits, but meaningfully." Her gaze was steady. "But I don't want a reluctant participant out of obligation either." "And us?" Adrian ventured cautiously. "What are your expectations there?" "I'm not seeking a relationship under duress," Lila replied. "That serves no one." Her honesty was refreshing in a world where Adrian was accustomed to people calculating their responses based on what he wanted to hear. "May I accompany you to your next medical appointment?" he asked suddenly. The question clearly surprised her. "You want to?" "I do." 2 weeks later, Adrian found himself in an unfamiliar environment, a medical waiting room filled with expectant mothers and their partners. His tailored suit stood out among the casual attire of other patients. Lila sat beside him, reviewing a pamphlet on multiple pregnancies. Miss Chen. A nurse appeared at the door, smiling when she spotted Lila. Her eyes registered brief curiosity at Adrian's presence but remained professionally neutral. Dr. Patel is ready for you. The examination room was clinically bright, medical equipment arranged efficiently around an examination bed. Dr. Patel, a composed woman with graying hair and direct manner, introduced herself to Adrian with a firm handshake. "First-time father?" she asked. "Yes," Adrian replied, the label feeling foreign yet strangely significant. "And first-time witness to an ultrasound, I'm guessing. You might want to sit down for this." As Lila positioned herself on the examination table, Adrian took the chair beside her. Without conscious thought, he offered his hand. Lila hesitated momentarily before accepting it. The monitor flickered to life as Dr. Patel moved the ultrasound wand across Lila's abdomen. Black and white images appeared, indistinct to Adrian's untrained eye until the doctor began pointing out details. "Here's baby A," she indicated. "And here, baby B. C is over here and D is tucked back here." Adrian leaned closer, straining to distinguish the separate forms. When Dr. Patel activated the audio, the room filled with rapid, overlapping heartbeats. "Strong cardiac activity in all four," she noted approvingly. "That's what we like to see." The abstract concept of quadruplets suddenly crystallized into reality. These weren't theoretical responsibilities or statistical anomalies, they were living beings with beating hearts. His children. Adrian's grip on Lila's hand tightened involuntarily. She glanced at him, clearly registering the shift in his expression. "Everything looks appropriate for 14 weeks gestation," Dr. Patel continued, taking measurements. "But we need to discuss next steps. Multiple pregnancies, especially quadruplets, carry significant risks that increase as gestation progresses." She outlined a comprehensive care plan. Frequent monitoring, potential interventions, hospital bed rest in later stages, and delivery significantly earlier than single pregnancies. Many quadruplet pregnancies deliver around 30 to 32 weeks, she explained, which means extended NICU stays are likely. The medical details continued, each new piece of information adding complexity to an already overwhelming situation. Through it all, Adrian observed Lila absorbing everything with composed determination, asking precise questions about risks and options. As they left the medical building afterward, Adrian finally addressed what had been building inside him since hearing those heartbeats. "I want to be involved," he stated firmly. "Not just financially. Really involved." Lila stopped walking and turned to face him. "What does that mean exactly?" Adrian considered his answer carefully. "I don't know the exact shape of it yet. But those are my children too. I need to be part of their lives. And in 9 months when your novelty about this situation wears off? When there are 4 infants needing constant care and attention?" Her challenge was fair. Adrian's life had been structured around freedom and control. Both would be compromised by active parenthood. "I can't prove my intentions except through consistent actions," he acknowledged. "But I'd like the chance to try." Something in his voice must have conveyed his sincerity, because Lila's expression softened. "One step at a time," she suggested. "Starting with how we're going to manage the practical aspects of this situation." They agreed to meet again the following weekend to begin planning, the first of many conversations that would gradually bridge their separate worlds. By the 20th week of pregnancy, Lila's life had transformed completely. Her compact frame now carried a pronounced bump that drew curious glances and unsolicited advice from strangers. The specialist appointments filled her calendar, each visit revealing new complexities in managing a quadruplet pregnancy. "Your blood pressure is elevated," Dr. Patel noted during a routine checkup, her expression concerned as she reviewed the chart. and there are early signs of placental insufficiency for baby C. Lila tried to process the implications. What does that mean? It means baby C isn't receiving optimal nutrition through the placenta. We'll need more frequent monitoring and possibly medication to improve blood flow. Dr. Patel's practiced calm did little to mask the seriousness of the situation. I'm also recommending reduced activity starting now. Reduced activity? Lila repeated. I have classes to teach, commissions to complete. Your primary job now is growing these babies, the doctor replied firmly. Every week we keep them developing inside is critical. The financial implications hit Lila immediately. Teaching art classes at the community center constituted half her income. The commissions she'd accepted required physical stamina she no longer possessed. With her medical appointments already consuming savings, this new restriction threatened her precarious stability. As if reading her thoughts, Dr. Patel added, "Have you discussed support systems with the father? Many multiple birth families require significant assistance, both during pregnancy and after." Adrian had attended 3 appointments so far, absorbing medical information with the same intensity he applied to business acquisitions. He'd started an extensive research file on multiple births and arranged for Lila to consult with the top maternal-fetal medicine specialist in the country, an expert whose waiting list typically extended months. But they hadn't defined their relationship beyond co-parenting discussions. Their interactions remained cordial but cautious, each navigating unfamiliar territory without established boundaries. That evening, Lila called Adrian from her apartment, where she'd spent hours calculating and recalculating her dwindling financial runway. "The doctor wants me to stop working," she explained after summarizing the appointment. Her voice remained steady through practiced determination. "I've been trying to find remote teaching opportunities, but the timing is difficult mid-semester." Adrian's response was immediate. "Let me help. I can arrange for a regular stipend to cover your expenses until the babies arrive." "Adrian, I'm not comfortable. This isn't charity, Lila. It's practical support for our children." His tone softened. "Please. You're carrying an extraordinary burden. Let me carry the financial one." After further discussion, they reached a compromise. Adrian would cover her medical expenses and basic living costs, structured as an advance on shared parenting expenses rather than personal support. Lila insisted on maintaining this distinction, unwilling to surrender her independence entirely. While Lila adjusted to medical restrictions and financial dependence, Adrian faced his own challenges. His executive team had noticed his distraction during strategic meetings and unusual schedule modifications to accommodate prenatal appointments. "The Tokyo expansion requires your personal attention," his COO insisted during their weekly briefing. "The Nakamura Group won't finalize without direct assurance from you." "Schedule the meetings," Adrian replied, mentally calculating how to fit international travel around Lila's critical upcoming scans. "They're requesting 3 weeks on site," the COO continued. "Starting next Monday." The timing couldn't have been worse. Lila would be entering her 24th week, a critical threshold for viability should complications arise. "That won't work," Adrian stated flatly. 2 days maximum, with video conferencing for follow-up. The COO's surprise was evident. In 10 years, Adrian had never refused a necessary business trip, often flying overnight to close important deals personally. "May I ask why?" the COO ventured carefully. Adrian considered his response. He hadn't disclosed Lila's pregnancy within the company, preferring to manage the situation privately until they had established clearer parameters for their future. "I have personal matters requiring my presence here," he answered simply. The whispers began shortly thereafter. Administrative assistants noted his blocked calendar on appointment days. His driver reported dropping him at medical buildings. When a junior analyst spotted Adrian in a bookstore purchasing multiple volumes on infant care, the corporate rumor mill accelerated to full capacity. Speculation peaked when Vernon Shaw, Adrian's most significant investor and longtime mentor, confronted him directly during their monthly dinner. "Word is you've gotten someone pregnant," Vernon stated bluntly, skipping their usual business preliminaries. "Please tell me you have the situation under control." Adrian set down his fork deliberately. "If by under control you mean legally and financially managed, yes. That's not what I mean." Vernon leaned forward. "Child support is expected. Involvement is messy. Your investors backed you because you're focused, disciplined, and unencumbered by personal complications. The situation is more complex than you realize," Adrian replied evenly. "Then enlighten me." Adrian hesitated before answering. "It's quadruplets." Vernon's practiced composure faltered. "Good God." "Exactly. This changes the calculation significantly." Vernon's tone shifted from accusation to concern. "The publicity alone, multiple births attract attention. If the mother decides to leverage this for media coverage—" "She won't," Adrian interrupted firmly. "She's not that kind of person." "Everyone has a price," Vernon countered. "Especially single mothers facing the astronomical costs of raising multiple children." The suggestion that Lila might exploit their situation ignited an unexpected anger in Adrian. "I appreciate your concern, but this matter is personal." Vernon's expression hardened. "Nothing is entirely personal when you manage billions in investor funds. Perception matters, Adrian. If you appear distracted or compromised, confidence wavers." The conversation left Adrian unsettled. For the first time, his professional and personal priorities stood in direct opposition. The qualities that had propelled his success, singular focus, emotional detachment, relentless work ethic, now complicated his desire to be present for Lila and their unborn children. Meanwhile, Lila faced her own social pressures. Her closest friends reacted to her pregnancy news with varying degrees of shock and concern. Quadruplets? With a man you barely know. Zoe couldn't mask her alarm during their lunch together. And he's wealthy? This sounds like a Lifetime movie with a troubling plot. "It's not like that," Lila insisted, defensive despite herself. "Adrian has been supportive." "Rich men can always afford to appear supportive," Zoe countered. "Until they decide the complication isn't worth the cost." "You don't know him." "Neither do you, Lila. That's my point." The conversation highlighted the extraordinary nature of their situation. In the eyes of others, their arrangement appeared either calculated or reckless, a perception that bothered Lila more than she cared to admit. As her 28th week approached, Dr. Patel ordered complete bed rest following an alarming spike in blood pressure and early contractions. "Hospital admission might become necessary," she warned. "We need to monitor you constantly at this stage." That night, alone in her apartment with delivery groceries Adrian had arranged, Lila confronted the reality of her isolation. Her parents remained in Taiwan, unaware of her pregnancy. She delayed telling them, unsure how to explain her complicated situation across cultural and generational divides. Her friends, though concerned, had their own busy lives. And Adrian, despite his practical support, maintained emotional distance that left her feeling adrift. The contractions began shortly after midnight, subtle at first, then increasingly pronounced. When they occurred 5 minutes apart, Lila called Dr. Patel's emergency line. "Go to emergency immediately," the doctor instructed. "I'll meet you there." Lila's second call was to Adrian. His phone went directly to voicemail. He was in a late negotiation with European investors. Fighting rising panic, she called for an ambulance, then texted Adrian with shaking hands, "Hospital. Contractions. Too early." At the hospital, medical staff moved with controlled urgency. Monitors were attached, IVs inserted, and medications administered to halt the premature labor. Through it all, Lila remained acutely aware of her solitude amid the medical flurry. "We need to stop these contractions," Dr. Patel explained. 28 weeks is still highly premature for quadruplets. Each additional day makes a significant difference in their development. Hours passed in a blur of medical interventions and increasing discomfort. Shortly before dawn, when the medications had finally stabilized her condition, Adrian appeared in the doorway. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, tie loosened, hair unkempt, expression raw with worry. "I came as soon as I got your message," he said, moving quickly to her bedside. "What happened?" "Early labor. They've stopped it for now." Lila's voice sounded distant to her own ears, fatigue blurring her words. Adrian took her hand, his grip conveying what words couldn't. "I should have been here sooner." "You're here now," she murmured, the simple fact of his presence unexpectedly comforting. Dr. Patel entered with the latest test results. "The good news is we've stabilized the contractions. The concerning news is that 2 of the babies are showing signs of distress." "What does that mean?" Adrian asked, his businessman's directness returning. "It means we're at a crucial decision point," the doctor explained. "Lila will need to remain hospitalized for the duration of the pregnancy, which ideally would continue at least 4 more weeks. However, we must balance extending gestation against increasing risks to the fetuses." The gravity of the situation settled over them. 4 tiny lives hung in precarious balance, their futures dependent on medical interventions and biological resilience. Adrian's phone buzzed with incoming messages, the Tokyo deal entering its final critical phase, investors awaiting his guidance, millions in potential revenue requiring his attention. He silenced it without checking the screen. In that sterile hospital room, surrounded by beeping monitors and the distant sounds of medical staff, priorities clarified with sudden, absolute clarity. The business empire he'd built, the reputation he'd cultivated, the wealth he'd accumulated, all of it paled against the fragile heartbeats displayed on the monitor beside Lila's bed. "What do you need from me?" he asked her quietly. Lila looked at him with exhausted eyes. "Just don't disappear." It was the simplest request, yet it demanded the most profound shift in Adrian's carefully constructed life. As dawn broke over the city skyline visible from the hospital window, he made his choice. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised, and meant it completely. For the next 17 days, Adrian rarely left the hospital. He converted a corner of Lila's room into a makeshift office, conducting essential business via video conferences while monitoring her condition. The medical staff grew accustomed to his presence. The serious CEO who questioned every treatment plan and researched medical journals late into the night. "You need to rest too," Lila told him one evening, watching as he reviewed quarterly reports with one hand while adjusting her pillow with the other. "I'm fine," he insisted, though the shadows beneath his eyes suggested otherwise. Adrian had informed his executive team about the situation in a brief, factual email. "I am expecting quadruplets. The pregnancy is high risk. Adjust schedules accordingly." The corporate response ranged from stunned silence to calculated maneuvering as various executives positioned themselves for potential leadership gaps. Vernon Shaw had been less accommodating. "The board is concerned," he stated during a private call. "Your focus is clearly compromised." The Tokyo deal closed successfully, Adrian pointed out. "The quarterly projections are exceeding estimates." "That's not the point. This situation represents a fundamental shift in your priorities." "Yes," Adrian acknowledged simply. "It does." The admission marked a turning point, not just in his conversation with Vernon, but in Adrian's understanding of himself. The ruthless dedication that had defined his career now redirected toward protecting Lila and their unborn children. The transformation wasn't without cost. Several investors expressed reservations about his diminished availability, and a major client postponed their contract renewal, citing concerns about continuity of leadership. Each morning, Adrian joined the medical team's rounds, absorbing complex information about amniotic fluid levels, fetal heart rates, and placental function. Dr. Patel, initially skeptical of his presence, gradually came to respect his intelligent questions and calm support of Lila. "She's doing remarkably well," the doctor told him privately after a particularly encouraging scan. "Her determination is keeping these babies developing." "She's stronger than she appears," Adrian agreed. "As for you," Dr. Patel added with professional directness, "have you considered what happens after birth? Quadruplets require extraordinary support systems." The question had occupied Adrian's thoughts constantly. The pristine penthouse where he rarely spent more than 6 hours sleeping seemed ludicrously unsuitable for infants. His lifestyle, 16-hour workdays, international travel, solitary meals at midnight, was incompatible with parenthood in any form, let alone the intensive demands of multiple newborns. That night, while Lila slept, Adrian began researching suitable family homes in quiet neighborhoods with excellent schools. He compiled lists of qualified neonatal nurses, contacted multiple agencies specializing in multiple support, and drafted a comprehensive parental leave policy for his own company, something that had never existed because no executive had ever requested such accommodation. On the morning of the 31st week of pregnancy, Lila woke with intense back pain. Within hours, her condition deteriorated rapidly. "The placenta for baby C is failing," Dr. Patel explained, her calm demeanor belied by the urgency in her eyes. "We need to deliver now." The delivery room transformed into a carefully choreographed emergency response, with teams assigned to each infant. Adrian, dressed in hospital scrubs, stood at Lila's side as the C-section began, his hand steadying hers. "I'm frightened," Lila whispered, the first time she had admitted vulnerability throughout the ordeal. "They have the best doctors," Adrian assured her, his voice projecting a confidence he didn't entirely feel. "Not for me," she clarified. "For them. For us. Everything changes now." Before Adrian could respond, the medical procedure intensified. Minutes later, the first cry, thin but determined, filled the room. "Baby A, female, 3.2 pounds, called a nurse, whisking the tiny infant to a waiting team. The subsequent deliveries followed in rapid succession. Baby B, male, 3.4 pounds. Baby C, female, 2.8 pounds. Baby D, male, 3 pounds. 4 miniature humans, each smaller than Adrian's outstretched hand, all requiring immediate specialized care. They were quickly transported to the NICU, while the surgical team completed Lila's procedure. In the recovery room hours later, exhaustion etched deep lines across Lila's face. "Have you seen them?" she asked Adrian when she awakened. "Yes," he replied, his voice uncharacteristically unsteady. "They're incredible." "Tell me." Adrian described each baby in careful detail, the determined grip of their daughter's tiny fingers, the alert eyes of their first son, the delicate features of their smallest daughter, the strong cry of their second son. He showed her photographs he'd taken in the NICU, where the infants lay surrounded by monitoring equipment and feeding tubes. "They need names," Lila murmured. The realization startled them both. In all their practical preparations, they had never discussed names, a fundamental parental task overlooked in the medical urgency. "What do you think?" Adrian asked. Their subsequent conversation lasted hours, weaving between family traditions, cultural meanings, and personal preferences. By morning, they had reached decisions that honored both their heritages, Emma Grace and Lily May for their daughters, Michael James and Thomas Chin for their sons. The following weeks established a new rhythm. While Lila recovered from surgery, Adrian divided his time between hospital visits and hastily arranged home preparations. The NICU became their primary world, a place of measured victories and sudden setbacks, where every gram gained and each successful feeding represented progress. On the 12th day, Emma developed a respiratory infection that required intubation. Adrian arrived at the hospital to find Lila in tears beside the incubator, watching their daughter struggle for breath. The doctor says she's responding to antibiotics, Lila explained, not taking her eyes from the tiny form. But I keep thinking, what if we lose her? What if we lose any of them? Adrian stood beside her, watching the mechanical rise and fall of their daughter's chest. His usual arsenal of reassurances and solutions seemed hollow against the fragility before them. I don't know what I would do, he admitted. I never expected to care this much. Lila looked at him then, really looked at him, beyond the composed exterior to the vulnerability beneath. None of this is what I expected, she said softly. That night, they shared dinner in the hospital cafeteria, a far cry from the elegant restaurant where they'd first discussed the pregnancy. Between consultations with specialists and NICU updates, they began a conversation unlike any they'd had before. I was raised to believe vulnerability was weakness, Adrian confessed, the fluorescent lights revealing unusual openness in his expression. My father measured worth by achievement and control. And now, Lila prompted, now I understand that real strength comes from caring deeply enough to accept the possibility of loss. He met her gaze directly. These past months have changed me, Lila. Changed us both, she acknowledged. My entire adult life, I've guarded my independence fiercely. I was convinced I needed to stand alone to be strong. And now I'm learning that strength sometimes means allowing connection. She managed a tired smile. Even when it's terrifying. As days stretched into weeks, their conversations continued, during NICU visits, shared hospital meals, and late-night phone calls when Adrian worked from home on urgent business matters. They spoke of childhoods that had shaped them, relationships that had wounded them, and dreams they'd abandoned for practicality's sake. Gradually, amid the medical crises and small victories, something shifted between them. The cautious politeness that had characterized their early interactions gave way to authentic communication, sometimes difficult, often raw, but increasingly essential to them both. On the day Lily, the smallest of the quadruplets, was deemed strong enough to try breastfeeding, Lila experienced a moment of pure joy that overwhelmed her. When Adrian arrived for his evening visit, he found her crying. "What's happened?" he asked, immediately alarmed. "Nothing's wrong," she assured him. I held her without tubes or monitors today. Just held her against my skin. And I realized, these babies we made by accident? They're the most deliberate thing I've ever done." Adrian sat beside her, placing his hand gently over hers. "I've been thinking about what happens when they're discharged. The logistics, the support systems. I know. We need to figure out living arrangements, schedules, everything. What if?" He hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. "What if we tried living together? Not permanently," he added quickly. "A temporary arrangement while we adjust to having 4 newborns at home." Lila considered the proposal. Co-parenting across separate households would be challenging with 1 baby, let alone 4. Yet the idea of domestic entanglement with Adrian, still in many ways a stranger despite their shared crisis, presented its own complications. "Where would we live? Your penthouse isn't exactly baby-friendly." "I've purchased a house," he admitted. 4 bedrooms, quiet neighborhood, 10 minutes from the hospital. The lower level could be converted to a studio for your work. You bought a house without telling me? Lila's surprise held a note of accusation. It's an investment property, Adrian clarified. Whether you decide to live there or not, it's available for the children. No pressure or obligations implied. His careful phrasing revealed lingering uncertainty between them, the delicate balance of building connection while maintaining boundaries. Before Lila could respond, a nurse approached with Michael in her arms. "Someone's asking for his parents," she said, smiling as she transferred the infant to Lila's waiting embrace. The moment crystallized their reality. Regardless of their relationship status, they were irrevocably connected as parents. The 4 tiny humans in the NICU had rewritten the terms of their existence, creating a family where none had existed before. "I'll consider the house," Lila said finally. "But Adrian, we need to be honest about what we're doing. Are we co-parenting out of necessity, or is there something more that we're both afraid to name?" The question hung between them, laden with implications. Adrian looked at the child in her arms, their son, with his determined expression so like his mother's, and recognized that methodical planning and careful distance would no longer suffice. "I think," he said slowly, "that I'm falling in love with you. Not because of the children, though they're part of it, but because these past months have shown me who you really are, and made me reconsider who I want to be." The admission, stripped of calculation or strategy, stood as evidence of how profoundly he had changed. The man who had built an empire on emotional detachment now offered his heart without guarantees. Lila's eyes filled with fresh tears. "I'm terrified of depending on anyone, of building a life that could collapse if you change your mind." "I know," Adrian acknowledged. "I haven't earned your trust yet, but I'd like the chance to try." As their son stirred in Lila's arms, his tiny face scrunching with newborn determination, they both recognized the enormous leap of faith before them, not just in parenting 4 vulnerable children, but in risking their guarded hearts with each other. "One day at a time," Lila suggested softly, "starting with getting these 4 little fighters home safely." Adrian nodded, reaching to steady Michael's head with gentle fingers. "One day at a time," he agreed. In that moment of shared purpose, they glimpsed the possibility of a future neither had imagined, one built not on perfect planning, but on courage to embrace the beautiful uncertainty of love. 1 year after that fateful charity gala, Lila stood in the sunlit kitchen of the suburban home she now shared with Adrian and their 4 infants. Outside, autumn painted the maple trees in brilliant reds and golds, mirroring the season when their unexpected journey began. The transition from hospital to home had been gradual. Thomas, the strongest of the quadruplets, came home first at 8 weeks, followed by Michael and Emma days later. Lily, the smallest, remained in the NICU for nearly 3 months before joining her siblings. Those early weeks tested their endurance beyond anything either had experienced. Sleep became a precious commodity, measured in fragmented 90-minute intervals between feedings. The carefully organized feeding and medication schedules filled an entire whiteboard in the kitchen. A rotating team of night nurses provided essential support, yet still left plenty of demanding hours for the new parents. "I never understood why sleep deprivation is used as torture until now," Lila remarked one morning, attempting to sketch while Emma slept in a carrier against her chest. The half-finished drawing showed Adrian reading to the babies, one of the few peaceful moments in their chaotic days. Adrian looked up from his laptop where he was reviewing contracts during a rare synchronized nap time. "I once closed a $3 billion deal after 36 hours without sleep. This is significantly harder." His admission reflected their new reality. The man who had commanded boardrooms now celebrated small victories, all 4 babies gaining weight, successfully managing a grocery trip with twin strollers, or capturing a fleeting smile on camera. The house Adrian had purchased transformed gradually from a properly staged showplace to a lived-in home. The formal dining room became a makeshift studio where Lila worked during naps. The pristine living room now featured a custom-built playpen large enough for all 4 infants. Baby gear occupied every corner, swings, bouncy seats, and bassinets arranged for maximum efficiency. Their relationship evolved with similar gradual certainty. The tentative, one day at a time, approach gave way to deeper commitment as they navigated countless challenges together. When Michael developed colic that kept him crying through endless nights, they took alternating shifts, passing the fussing infant between them at 3-hour intervals. When Emma showed early separation anxiety, Adrian adjusted his work schedule to maintain her sense of security. The professional consequences of Adrian's transformed priorities became increasingly apparent. 3 months after the babies came home, Vernon Shaw requested a private meeting at Adrian's office. "The board has concerns about your long-term commitment," he stated without preamble. "Henderson Capital is considering withdrawing their investment." Adrian nodded, unsurprised. "And what are your personal thoughts, Vernon?" The older man's expression softened slightly. "Off the record? I've never seen you look healthier. But professionally, your absence is being felt. The 24/7 availability that built this company has disappeared. I've restructured my executive team to compensate," Adrian pointed out. "Quarterly results remain strong. It's not about current results. It's about perception of future commitment." Vernon hesitated before continuing. "There's talk of offering you a chairman position. Ceremonial leadership while bringing in a new CEO for daily operations." The suggestion would have been unthinkable a year earlier. Adrian had built Blackwood Investments through relentless personal involvement in every significant decision. His identity had been inextricably tied to his professional role. "I'll consider it," he replied, surprising himself with his equanimity. That evening, he described the conversation to Lila as they collaborated on the complex choreography of bathing 4 infants. "Are you upset?" she asked, wrapping Thomas in a hooded towel shaped like a frog. "Strangely, no." Adrian carefully dried Lily's delicate fingers. "A year ago, being sidelined would have seemed like failure. Now it feels like an opportunity to redefine success." Lila smiled, recognizing how profoundly he had changed. "The mighty CEO discovers there's life beyond quarterly reports. I discovered there's joy beyond achievement," he corrected gently. "Though I'm still adjusting to the sticky handprints on my dress shirts." Not every moment brought such clarity. The adjustment to shared parenting and cohabitation produced inevitable tensions. Adrian's tendency toward micromanagement clashed with Lila's more intuitive approach. Her creative disorder conflicted with his preference for structured environments. They argued about everything from feeding schedules to financial decisions. Yet even their conflicts revealed growing trust. When Adrian suggested a college fund structure that Lila found overly rigid, she challenged him directly rather than acquiescing to his financial expertise. When Lila proposed extending a deadline for an important gallery submission, Adrian advocated for her professional development despite the domestic complications it created. 6 months after the quadruplets came home, Lila completed her first major art collection since the pregnancy. Titled Multiplied Visions, the series depicted fragmented perspectives of their new life, tiny hands reaching from cribs, the shadow of Adrian walking with 2 infants against the morning light, the pattern of bottle nipples drying on the kitchen counter. The exhibition opening coincided with the baby's first birthday. Lila stood in the gallery surrounded by well-dressed patrons, explaining her techniques and inspirations. Adrian arrived late, having supervised the night nurse's orientation to the children's bedtime routine. "They're responding well to your work," he observed, joining her beside a large canvas showing 4 distinct brushstroke styles merging together. "The reviews have been positive," Lila acknowledged. The gallery owner mentioned interest from 2 major collectors. Adrian studied the painting more closely. "It's extraordinary, watching you reclaim your creative identity alongside motherhood." "It hasn't been easy," she admitted. "There are days I resent the limitations, moments I long for my old independent life. And yet I wouldn't trade this complicated, exhausting new existence for anything." She leaned slightly against his shoulder, a casual intimacy that had developed naturally between them. Not the 3 a.m. feedings or the logistical nightmares or even the disagreements about appropriate baby music. "Classical builds neural pathways," Adrian insisted, resuming their good-natured ongoing debate. "And my jazz selections stimulate creativity," Lila countered with a smile. The gallery event marked an important milestone in their evolving balance between parental responsibilities and individual identities. For Lila, returning to professional recognition affirmed that motherhood hadn't erased her artistic self. For Adrian, supporting her success while temporarily stepping back from his own career revealed new dimensions of partnership. Their first year together brought other significant transitions. Adrian formally restructured his company leadership, accepting the chairman position while promoting his CFO to chief executive. The arrangement allowed him to maintain strategic involvement while reducing his daily operational responsibilities. Lila's parents finally visited from Taiwan, their initial shock at her unconventional family situation gradually yielding to delight in their grandchildren. Adrian's parents remained more distant, sending expensive gifts but limited personal engagement, a dynamic he now recognized as their limitation rather than his failure. As spring returned to the city, Adrian found Lila in her studio one evening after the children were asleep. She was adding final touches to a commission piece, a family portrait for a client who had attended her gallery opening. "The realtor called," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "The lake house we looked at is available if we're still interested." Lila set down her brush. "The one with the studio overlooking the water?" "The same. It would make a good weekend retreat. Perhaps a summer place as the children grow." They had begun discussing future possibilities more openly, not just practical concerns about the quadruplets' development, but longer-term visions for their shared life. The conversation represented enormous progress from their early cautious negotiations. "I'd like that," Lila said, "though managing 4 toddlers near open water sounds challenging." Adrian smiled. "We've handled more difficult situations." He crossed the room and gently turned her chair to face him. "Which brings me to another question I've been considering." The shift in his tone caught her attention. "What question?" Adrian reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "I've approached this backward from the beginning. Children before commitment, home before understanding, a future before properly requesting one." Lila's eyes widened as he opened the box to reveal a ring featuring a modest central diamond surrounded by 4 smaller stones. "I'm not proposing because of convenience or obligation," Adrian continued. "This past year has taught me what real partnership means, supporting each other through exhaustion and joy, challenge and triumph. I love you, Lila. Not despite the complications you've brought to my ordered life, but because of the authenticity and purpose you've revealed within it." Tears filled Lila's eyes as Adrian knelt beside her chair. "Will you marry me? Not because we share children, but because I want to share everything else with you too. The arguments about jazz versus classical, the pre-dawn coffee while reviewing pediatrician notes, the quiet moments when we're too tired to speak but still find comfort in each other's presence." Lila touched the ring with trembling fingers. "You've planned everything else in our life together. What makes you think I haven't planned this?" With that, she opened her studio drawer and removed a small box of her own. Inside lay a simple platinum band. "I was waiting for the right moment," she explained. "When you'd be convinced I wasn't accepting out of practical consideration or parental obligation." Adrian's surprise gave way to understanding. "And have we reached that moment?" "We have," Lila confirmed. "Because now we both know this isn't about completing a family unit or securing stability. It's about choosing each other, deliberately and completely." As they exchanged rings in the quiet studio, with evidence of their shared life surrounding them, baby monitors, half-finished paintings, architectural plans for the lake house, they recognized how far they had traveled from that chance meeting at a charity gala. What had begun as an improbable accident had transformed, through choice and commitment, into something authentic and enduring. The unexpected pregnancy that once seemed like life's ultimate complication had instead revealed life's fundamental truth, that love, in its most meaningful form, arrives not according to careful plans but through our willingness to embrace wonderful uncertainty. In the nursery down the hall, 4 sleeping children, each with their distinct personalities already emerging, represented not the disruption of 2 separate lives, but the extraordinary beginning of one shared journey. Against impossible odds, through medical challenges and personal transformation, Adrian and Lila had discovered that sometimes life's most meaningful path begins with a single unexpected step. My dear sweet and lovely family, if you enjoyed this journey of unexpected